I hope you're good. So this week we're going to do another tutorial, but I'm going to do something completely different, which is we're going to look at a modular synthesizer, which is not something I've ever featured on my channel before. We're going to use a Roland System 100M from 1978, and we're going to cook up some analog drum sounds, so kick, snare, hi-hats, toms, cymbals and percussion. And I'm going to walk you through how I've done it, and hopefully it'll be of interest. So let's just talk briefly about the System 100M. So this is from 1978, would you believe? It's in phenomenal condition. This doesn't belong to me, it's just passing through my studio as part of a bigger project. Obviously this is an entirely modular system, so to get any sound out of it at all, you have to patch in a desired signal path. Each of these is a module, and these can be replaced with various different modules that were available at the time, although obviously you have to have combinations that together can create sound. So this is a kind of standard setup. So you've got two VCOs, two VCFs, two VCAs, two envelopes, two LFOs, ring mod, noise gen, white and pink, and sample and hold. And then at the bottom you've got these multis, and what those do is they allow you to bring signals down and split them out, or bring signals down and combine them and split them out. So that exponentially increases the number of possible patches you can create. Then you've got CV and gate in and out, and trigger in and out, and then you've got an input for a keyboard that you can get for this. You can also chain cases of System 100Ms together and have walls and walls of them if you want to have a really elaborate system and make loads of different sounds at the same time. But we're just going to use one case for now, and I'm going to show you how to make some sounds. So let's cook up a kick drum sound. So the first thing I need to do is bring a gate into the system. And the way I'm going to do that is I've got a BeatStep Pro just off camera, and it's got a drum sequencer that will spit out 8 different gates. And I've programmed a kick drum pattern on gate number 1. And here it is. So there's a couple of different places you can go in with a gate, but we're going to go in here in the main gate in. And the reason we're doing that is that gates the whole system together. And the reason we want to do that is obvious, because we want a kick drum sound and we want it to be tight and punchy. So we want everything running in sync and running together. So that's the most effective way to do that. The next thing we're going to do is get a VCO. We come out here, we set that to a sine wave there, and we're going to go into a filter. Set the level here. Then we're going to come out of the filter and go into a VCA. Set the level here, and then we'll be coming out of the VCA here and coming out to one of the main outputs down the bottom. But we now need a way to open the VCA and shape it. And of course, the most obvious way to do that is with an envelope. So we've got 2 positive, 1 negative. I'm going to take a positive. We're going to go into the mod in of the VCA, and then you set the level there. Now, if I set the BeatStep Pro off, we should hear a sound. And we do. So now what we've got to do is use a combination of the envelope, the filter, and the tuning of the VCO to get the sound the way we want it. So obviously we can make it longer, have more sustain, or we can make it very short, like that, or really long. And I like it about there. So this is the basic kind of body of our sound, but we need to do something else, which I'll go into now. So the first thing we've created is kind of the resonant shell sound of a kick drum. But when you think about a kick drum, when the beater hits the skin, you get this kind of initial attack sound, and you also get a kind of bending of the skin as the beater hits it. But it's very, very quick. It's like a very, very sharp sound, and then you get the resonant, flappy shell sound that we've kind of already created. So the way we're going to create that attack is we're going to use another envelope to modulate the frequency of the VCO. So it's FM, frequency modulation. And what we're trying to do is have the frequency start a little bit above our kind of sustain tone and then very quickly drop down like that. So we get a very sharp bend in pitch. If you have too much envelope amount, the pitch is going to start too high and have a massive dive, and it's going to sound like a zap or a laser gun. So we don't want to do that. I'll show you that as I'm doing it. Also, if you have the envelope too slow or too long, it'll take too long for the pitch to come down to its resting pitch. So we want it to be just a little bit above and then swoosh down really quickly. And that will get us the kind of punchy attack sound we're getting, and it will sound more like an analog kick drum that you're used to hearing. So let's patch that in. So we want this envelope out into the mod in of this VCO. And let's dial it in and see what happens. And actually the settings I've got it are quite good. So just to demonstrate, if it's too much envelope amount, like I was saying, it will sound like a laser gun, like a zap. So it's about finding that balance. Again, if the envelope's too slow, it's just taking too long. Sounds like a arcade game, doesn't it? So it's about finding that balance. That feels quite good. So just to hear without it, that's our basic sound. And with it, so it makes quite a difference, doesn't it? But that is your kind of classic analog kick drum sound. It's nothing clever. People have been doing this for 40 years. But if you've not ever thought about how these sounds are made, hopefully this is interesting to you, because it's not really that complicated. And you can go and have a play and see if you can make this sound for yourself from scratch. So let's cook up a snare drum sound. So the first thing I've done is I've gone over to the BeatStep Pro, and on gate number 2 I've programmed my snare drum pattern. So gate number 2 is now coming in and gating the whole system. So for the basic sound, we're going to use the same setup, and this is going to be emulating the resonant tone of a snare drum. So if you think of a snare drum with the snare turned off, when you hit it you get that kind of resonant sound. So that's the same technique as we did for the kick drum, with the oscillator, a sine wave, and it having its frequency quickly modulated by this envelope. But we're just going to pitch it higher, because obviously a snare drum is higher in pitch than a kick drum. So let's tune that in. It's obviously way too low. So start about there, and we might change it as we go along. So the next thing we need is a noise source. We need some white noise. Comes out over there, and we're going to bring that in. And that's kind of giving us our snare sound. And I'm also going to bring in a bit of pink noise. So that's like a lower band of noise. So it's got a kind of darker, deeper sound. There's our white noise. And there's our oscillator that's giving us the kind of main tone of the sound. And then you just balance it. You can make it long. And about there, where it's quite punchy, sounds quite good. So I'm going to go with that. So for tom sounds, we're going to use the same basic setup, but we're going to introduce more of envelope 2 to the VCO, which is modulating the frequency, and we're going to exaggerate it a bit more so we get that kind of 70s disco tom sound, that pew pew. So I'll just have a little play with that. So we can have a tom there, and then a higher tom, so we can have like a high tom, low tom. So I'll have a little play around with that and put that in. Okay, for basic hi-hats, I've got another drum gate coming in with a different rhythm, and we're just going to use white noise, and then we're going to use the resonance from the filter. We're not going to use any oscillator at all. So if you push the resonance of a filter all the way up, it starts self-oscillating and it acts like an oscillator. And we're going to utilize that for part of the hi-hat sound. So let's set it going. So first thing we're going to do is shorten the envelope so it's super tight. And now we're going to push the resonance and tune it. And that gives us a kind of basic hi-hat tone. So for a kind of cowbell sound, I'm not going to use any VCO at all. I'm going to use 2 filters, and I'm going to push the resonance until they're self-oscillating. And then I've tuned them so they're about a flat 5 tritone apart. So this is VCF1. And then this is VCF2. And then if you mainly lean on VCF1 but feed in VCF2, you get a kind of pseudo cowbell sound. Then I'm just going to mix in a little bit of white noise on this filter and a little bit of pink on that filter. And that's basically our cowbell sound. We've used the high pass filter here, so this isn't resonant, it just cuts off low end. So with it on, and then with 2 notches up, just helps sculpt the sound a little bit more. So for some more percussion sounds, I've used the same principle as we did for the cowbell. So we've got 2 filters that are self-oscillating, but I've tuned them down lower. I'm playing with the envelope settings, and now I've got 2 kind of conga-esque sounds, one high and one low, and then playing with the levels of those, I can have them coming in and out for a little pattern. That kind of thing. So the last thing I'm going to do is create a very simple cymbal sound. So I'm going to come out of the white and pink noise into this filter. Filter's wide open, there's no self-oscillation. I'm 2 notches up on the high pass switch, and that is to get rid of all the bottom end because we don't really want that on a cymbal. And then I'm going to come out of this LFO. I'm going to bring that into the VCA as well. So we've got an envelope and an LFO modulating this VCA. You can set the output level here. ×1 is all the way on, and then there's a lower setting which is 1/10, which is subtler, and I'm going to use the 1/10. Then you choose your wave shape here. I'm going to use a sine wave. You set the frequency of it here. You've got a broad range, low, medium, high. I'm going to have it high and all the way up, and then I'm going to set a little bit of delay so it takes a little bit of time before it comes in and starts affecting the VCA. I'm also going to switch the VCA over from exponential, which is a tighter sound which you've been using previously, to linear, and I'm going to open the envelope out so it's got a longer tail to it, so it's more like a cymbal sound. So you can kind of hear that it decays and then you get like a little bit of flutter in it, so I'll just play around with that and get it to the way I like it. Okay, so my BeatStep Pro will sync up with Cubase, so I've been putting each sound down as we go along. Let's go over there and see what we've got. So if you're into Modular, then obviously this was very basic stuff, but if you're not, then hopefully it was quite interesting and showed you how to cook up some sounds so you can try them out for yourself. Let me know what you thought in the comments, and I'll catch you on the next one. Cheers!